associated with this process. So I've literally just completed a 63-day tour of the UK. I was in the Isle of Man last weekend, in 2 presentations in the Isle of Man. This week I've been up in Lancashire at the 2 public Cuadrilla meetings in Freckleston, which I think is about to be renamed Freckleston, and Elswick. And we actually caught Cuadrilla telling barefaced lies to the people that were coming along to their meetings. And I was giving a presentation in Glastonbury last night, and then it took 5 hours to fight the traffic to be here today, and of course as soon as I got here it started to pour with rain. But it's absolutely fantastic to see so many people here. We had a very interesting conversation with the police just now, and it seems that there is, on a personal level within the police, there's an interest in what's going on here. And I think what some of these guys are actually doing is they're going away and they are actually now starting to research it for themselves. Because I got the guy on video, he was quite happy to be videoed, and he was saying that he was looking at it and they have the same concerns on a personal level, but they're just here doing their job as well. Unfortunately, of course, what we see is actually prima facie evidence that we live in a corporate controlled society, which happens to be the same definition of fascism, of course.
Did you know there's actually a euphemism for that, inverted totalitarian?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
Exactly. So yesterday what we saw was the police literally escorting the trucks here on the second day, ostensibly the second day of the protest. Because right now in Poland, in eastern Poland, there's a community there that are on day 60. With their standoff with Chevron, and the police are not getting involved. Basically they're saying it's between Chevron, the government and the people, and the police are simply there to keep the peace. Here, of course, in this country, the police are there to carry out the will of the corporate controlled government.
Basically, our police, we pay our taxes for being controlled by private companies.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the story here is who is paying for this excessive policing. I mean, yesterday, obviously there were a number of arrests of people trying to block the gate. That was pretty well covered in the media. Obviously the editorial tells a different story than the pictures. The pictures show the excessive force being used to remove the protesters, but the text, at least in some of the papers, was a little bit more balanced. At the very least, what it is doing is raising awareness. It's putting the term fracking into the vocabulary across the wider population. I think this is the way this has got to be broken. We've literally, don't worry about the BBC or the mainstream media. Basically, we've got to be out there, spreading the word, explaining to people, what this process is all about, showing the prima facie evidence that everywhere in the world this process is unleashed. It results in contamination of the water, of the soil and of the air, and the health impacts are horrendous.
And we also liver failure, kidney problems, mutation in reproduction, and that's all fact.
And people going into early dementia, because what people don't realise is that methane is a neurotoxin, and methane is an odourless gas. So people are literally living in contaminated environments for, in a place like Colorado and New Mexico, for 2 decades. And although you don't notice it from one day to the next, but over time, obviously, people's health suffers dramatically. So you've got people going into early dementia in their 40s and 50s, as opposed to their 70s and 80s, which would be considered more normal.
That's ridiculous. So basically, what you're saying is in the age of dementia is lower as the population increases, so therefore we're going to have more people with mental health problems looked after, where we need NHS is one.
Well, let's talk about the health issues as well, because the British government obviously is refusing to acknowledge that there's any possibility of any negative health issues, and yet anywhere you look in the world where this process is going on, there are negative health issues. And the British media, in early June, almost every major newspaper and the BBC, their lead story was 50% of the population will have cancer by 2020. Well, this is going to accelerate that process. But we've got to remember as well that 64% of England sits above shale gas or coal bed methane. That's 64% of the country. This is the first time ever that the fracking process has ever been unleashed on a densely populated community. So everywhere else in the world, to date, Colorado, New Mexico, North Texas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, even Pennsylvania, and it's much more thinly populated than here. And Queensland, of course, in Australia is the same. 3 weeks ago, The Sun, every day of the week, ran a double-page spread promoting the fracturing process. And I think it was on the Thursday, one of the articles they ran was trying to make the link between Williston, North Dakota, and the phenomenal boom, economic boom, that Williston, North Dakota has enjoyed because of the shale gas industry in the Balcombe shale field there. And the illusion in the Sun article was that any community embracing the shale gas agenda would benefit in the same way as Williston, North Dakota. What they weren't actually sharing is, I know North Dakota well, I worked in the North American oil industry. North Dakota is 40% larger than England, right? So nearly half as big again as England. But the population of North Dakota, the entire population of North Dakota, is 60% of the population of Devon. Right? So consequently, of course, Williston's a boom town, because imagine that's like England, where the only town is Cambridge or Norwich. So people flock to it, to obviously get the work there. So there will be people in Williston who make a lot of money. The smart ones will make it and get out. But in this country, no one's going to really make any money. But what people are going to do is, unfortunately, if they do embrace the industry and they accept the bribes that the government's offering, and they know there's something wrong when they're offering the kind of bribes. What they're talking about is offering people who don't object to shale gas cheaper electricity. It ain't going to happen. Or cheaper gas. It ain't going to happen. They're offering communities that don't object to the arrival of the gas industry bribes of something in the region of $1 million plus. In fact, this industry, the Cuadrillas, the iGas Energies, the Egdon Resources, the UK Methanes, they've pledged a fund, to establish a fund of 1.1 billion to literally use to bribe communities. They call it social license, and what social license really means is public apathy. So when you see that they've achieved social license, what it means is that they've effectively browbeaten the community to the point where they're no longer objecting. And so the communities, they might get a village hall, they might get a new playground for the kids, but the reality is what they're doing is they're effectively condemning the next generation to lives of total abject misery.
Of course, ultimately the economic side, people live in houses, if this goes wrong, it's just bound to.
The property market in Balcombe is dead right now. I spoke to a guy on Monday, and he told me his house is on the market, and although he's had a lot of people come to view the house, nobody has actually put an offer. And when he's asked them, why not, they're nervous, because they want to see how this plays out. And in Blackpool, of course, where they have the track record, 2 wells drilled, 2 wells fracked, 2 seismic events, the property market in Blackpool is completely dead. And I came back from visiting some friends in Spain who left Blackpool after the second earthquake in May of 2011. They put the house on the market. It was valued at $325,000. It's a beautiful 5-bedroom house. They put it on the market at $250,000, 20% below the market value. They haven't had a single offer. So when I came back from visiting with them, I did a bit of research myself, and I spoke to a number of estate agents in Blackpool. And they basically all told me the same. It's a buyer's market, Mr. Brain, especially if you're a cash buyer. Well, I eventually spoke to an estate agent who'd been to one of my presentations, and he said, Ian, you're absolutely right. He said the market here is basically dead. And he said that it was dead before the moratorium was lifted, but since the moratorium was lifted, a lot more property has come onto the market. And if the drilling and fracking process actually starts on the Balcombe Peninsula, most of that property will probably never sell. Now, also, earlier this week, I was contacted by a friend of mine who works in the financial services industry, and he said, Ian, this is really going to not surprise you, is that the financial services industry are revisiting their strategy for mortgage lending in areas that are being targeted by the shale gas industry.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because they're starting to recognise that it's a high risk.
Basically, it's high risk lending, which is what the banks are trying not to do.
Exactly.
Which is the same as you tell them.
Well, one of the campaigners, what are we doing there? One of the campaigners in Blackpool, who goes by the name of Gazer Frackman. In fact, people now know him as Frackman. And he, up until 2 years ago, he had no interest in politics. No interest. He was just enjoying life. And then after the second seismic event, cracks appeared in the walls of his house. No, not on the external walls, but all the door frames came away from the walls, the ceiling separated from the tops of the walls. So he put a claim into his insurance company, and the insurance company said, oh no, seismic event, act of God. Well, except this act of God was Cuadrilla.
Yeah.
Well, now he and many others in the area have actually received letters from their insurance companies telling them they're no longer going to insure their properties. So it's a double whammy. So these people, not only are they now in properties that they can't sell, they're mortgaged up to the hill whilst the actual value of the property is effectively wiped out, and they can't insure the property because the insurance companies are saying it's too high risk.
And on the subject of seismic activity, there's a
viaduct.
And viaduct.
Yeah, the Ouse Valley Viaduct. You know, actually, I don't want to sort of sow seeds in anyone's mind, but after the second seismic event in Blackpool in May 2011, I must confess I heaved a sigh of relief, because I thought, thank goodness, hopefully now common sense will prevail, and you know, this is not going to be tried in the UK. And that's why, you know, when the moratorium was lifted, I thought, well, we have to do whatever it is we need to do to stop this. But now, if these guys actually drill and fracture this well, I will be absolutely praying that there will be sufficient seismic activity to cause some structural damage, not bring it down, but structural damage to that viaduct. Because if it stops, this is the main London to Brighton railway, which is a major artery on the commuter belt, and so consequently, if this line can't be used, then it's going to get everyone's attention.
Well, it's going to get everyone's attention. Most of the people who work in the city of London.
So seriously, to get people's attention.
Brilliant, Ian, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
This is Ian, everyone.